Thank you. Good morning. I think it's still morning. As Ray said, Andres just teed this up perfectly. What he went through was one particular strategy, and I will take us through some considerations for other strategies that you may employ in working with fintechs. I'll cover a couple different topics fairly briefly, all of them, starting with fintech is nothing new. That shouldn't be too shocking. We've been through some of this before. We'll talk about why this is a little bit different now, some of the fintech engagement models, what the future holds, and then 3 keys to success. And hopefully you'll be able to pick up along the way some things that your banks or financial institutions can do to better engage with fintechs to get the best out of them that they're getting out of you. As a partner at Ernst & Young, I work a lot with banks who are trying to partner with fintechs, and I hear from the banks the struggles that they have in terms of fintechs not understanding compliance, regulation, the requirements of a bank. And I also work with the fintechs quite a bit on partnering or acquisitions or investments. And I hear the opposite side of what I just said around the banks. Why can't the banks move faster? Why can't they just see that the technology is all they need and they just need to put it in and push it out to their clients and everybody will be happy? And so what I'll talk through a little bit is some of the strategies to help bridge the gaps that we have today that sometimes stand in the way of fintechs and banks partnering. So I said fintech is nothing new. The first credit card was issued in 1950, right? Diners Club in the United States. The first ATM, 1967 in Barclays in London. The first core processing software in the 70s, right? So we've been here before. We've had technology that helps us engage, help us create new business models within financial services to help us disrupt and enhance what we're doing around financial services. So fintech is not new in and of itself. So why are we talking about it now? What's different now? A couple of things. In 2007, a new product was launched that trained all of us to bring consumption into our hands. That product was the iPhone, right? So all of us now have an expectation that we want to consume something, we can do it within our hands, from online to in our hands, anywhere, anytime we want. At the same time, we saw a company called Uber emerge. That was in 2009, and we've heard stories already through the course of the day about the adoption of Uber. But what Uber taught us is that we should expect seamless experiences. The payment transaction fades into the background, and all of everything that you need to do to get from point A to point B is handled in a very seamless manner. And so, other thing that Uber taught us is sort of that expectation of customer experience. And I've heard a saying, and I'll repeat it here today, that the best experience that you have somewhere is the minimal experience that you expect everywhere. And that's when people talk about the Uberization of the world, that's probably the critical statement there. So with the power of the iPhone and the development of cloud and the expectation that was created by companies like Uber, there was now a void in the market as it related to financial services. Why can't we consume financial services in the same way that we consume everything else? And so there's a whole generation of fintech entrepreneurs who saw that expectation, saw that unmet need, and have started to proliferate and develop companies, many of whom are in the audience today. At the same time, banks were dealing with the global financial crisis, right? So spending hundreds of millions, billions of dollars on technology, but it was technology to run the bank and remediate the bank, not technology to to innovate the bank. But we're now seeing a shift, right? We're now, what I described, sort of the age of the iPhone and Uber, those were the early days of what I call Fintech 1.0. We're now heading into Fintech 2.0, where banks are still spending on compliance and regulation, but they're spending to automate. And they're now spending these huge technology budgets on innovation, new products, new experiences, new technologies to weave together experiences for their customers. And so I call that Fintech 2.0, and we'll see what 3.0 holds as we go forward. So how are some of the banks engaging? We heard from Andres about what the ways that banks are working with fintechs to drive this new generation of product and customer experience. We do some research at Ernst & Young where we look at the public disclosures of global banks, and this is what it told us, that over the last 6 months, about 2/3 of the engagement with fintechs was around the front office, so product, payments, and then CDM, which we call channels, distribution, and marketing. So 2/3 of the investment activity is taking place in front office. And then when we looked at the lines of business that this was impacting, about 40% of the investment or the activities or initiatives were going into the consumer bank, about 19% into the corporate bank, 17% into general infrastructure. When we think about Fintech 3.0, I think we're going to see a blending or a blurring where investment is going to be going across not just consumer, but across the entire bank. And it's going to be not just the front end, but also all of the functions that support the core of what a bank does in a very seamless way. We also looked at how banks were engaging, so by strategy, and by far, well, not by far, about 30% is through purchase, so through actual partnerships or commercial arrangement with the fintechs, just followed by about 29% doing in-house. And what I'll do is I'll take us through a couple of examples of that in just a second. But the top 5 technologies that we heard most about, and we've heard it here today: AI, APIs, DLT, or blockchain, and then authentication and payments. So first example, Bank of America, and we could probably substitute the name of any bank in this one. This is an example of taking a look at some sort of a product and the processes around it, and how do we take extra time out of it. So before they looked at this process, the mortgage process, it took 45 days to close a mortgage. Afterwards, it took 20, so cut the time in half. They did this using robotic process automation, looking at the data that the bank already had in-house about its customer and not asking the customer to re-enter or to refill out forms on data that they already had. Just a very simple innovation, and it seems so basic, but it took really some of these fintechs knocking at the doors of banks to encourage people to sort of rethink processes. Next example, RBS. This is an example of purchasing. So RBS, working with a biometric software company called BioCatch to record gestures on your phone for authentication purposes. So over 2,000 different gestures. The angle at which you hold your phone when you interact with it, the speed of the swipe, the pressure of your keying in on your phone. These are just 3, but they looked at 2,000 different gestures, create a database about how you engage with your phone, and then it's very easy for them to match that as you're trying to log on, and they can say that's you or it's not you very easily. So aiming towards the customer engagement, customer experience, making it seamless. So this is an example of a strategy around procurement or buying. And then the last one I'll talk about is Banco Pichincha. Should be very familiar to this audience. So Banco Pichincha, looking to serve one of the fintech unicorns, or unicorns in general, which is Rappi. And Rappi needs real-time data and transactional information, which is very difficult to deliver through a legacy core system. And so they partnered with a company called Novo Payment, who wrapped and digitized the core to be able to deliver digital financial services into the app of Rappi, so that the couriers could consume financial services through the app, as opposed to going to get cash, go to the store, make the purchase, go back to the cash dispenser, return the cash in a very non-seamless way. So I gave a couple of examples which talk through a couple of the different engagement models, right? So partnerships, Novo Payment is a good example of that. Investments, Andres talked through a number of, a model around making investments. The Bank of America was an example of in-house products. And then we have banks that are doing outright acquisitions of fintechs. And the purpose of this slide is really to talk through that there are different skills required to pursue these different strategies, and there is different level of engagement from the functions across the bank. So across from product, sales, technology, regulatory, and legal and finance and corp dev. So I won't go through all of them, but as you think about your financial institution and you think about the strategies that you want to pursue as you're engaging with these fintechs, take an example. If you are wanting to make investments, you're going to need a product team who can quickly assess what's good in the market and how does that fit in and enhance what we're delivering today within the bank already, right? You're also going to need a corporate development team or M&A team that can help, that has a sense of the pricing in the market and who can help evaluate what the investment opportunity should look like, the returns, et cetera. All right, so as you think about these different strategies, think about the configurations of your teams in order to implement them in the most effective way. Not surprisingly, product is a key component across all of these strategies. So product is the group that gets involved most heavily, irrespective of which strategy you pursue. Regulatory always needs to be in there. I think we'll always say they needed to be in there earlier than they were brought in, but they are a constant at the table in every situation. So these are some engagement models. We also like to think about it in terms of the life cycle of a deal, right? So starting at origination, where you need to figure out who are the pool of fintechs or potential partners that I may be working with. Cultivation, how do I cultivate that relationship? And then monetization, how do I get it out of my organization and into the market to sell it in some way? And again, just like on the prior slide, there are certain skills that are required. Across origination, cultivation, and monetization, there are certain aspects of your organization that are going to be called upon more, and certain skills that you're going to need to be effective. And I would argue, I meet with hundreds of banks a year across all geographies. I have not yet met a bank that is good at each of these steps. So there are banks that are very good at canvassing the market, understanding who's doing what, how the technologies interrelate, keeping track, almost like a CRM type knowledge of the market. But then when they try to bring a bank or bring a fintech into the bank to create a proof of concept or co-create a product with them, they get hung up. And they get hung up because they haven't been able to create some sort of a sandbox environment. They get held up in compliance where they're unable to get the fintech onboarded as a safe and secure potential partner. And so it's a whole other different set of skills that are required in this middle section around cultivation. The third piece, where banks often get hung up as well, is the monetization. You've done a great job. You've found the ideal fintech. You've created a proof of concept that is just going to knock the socks off your customers. And then you need to push it out through your sales channel. And often there's a chasm there. There's a gap where that fails to happen. And so as you're thinking again about how you use the benefits of fintech, thinking about the skills and the capabilities you need to be able to work across the life cycle. And certainly you don't start at the end with how you're going to monetize. Or you don't end with how you're going to monetize. You need to think about that at the beginning. Who's the customer that's going to serve, and bring that to the front in terms of who you identify for partnering. I said I would do a quick glimpse into what we think the future holds. My colleague Roger Park will be speaking later this afternoon on the future of banks. So I'm going to steal a little bit of his thunder and give you a preview of what he's going to talk about. But we think that there will be a handful of business models in the future. And thinking about how you're going to be engaging with fintechs really depends on which of these you think your financial institution is going to play. So will you be a vertically integrated bank, as most banks are today, right? So you own the value chain, the customer, you're producing the product, you're owning the distribution. Full integration. We also have digital natives, right, like N26 or Nubank, right, in Brazil. We have the concept of a financial utility, where maybe you are just the regulated utility, the regulated platform, an invisible back end, and there's no consumer brand whatsoever. If that's going to be your business model, there's going to be a different way that you're engaging with your peers and with emerging technology companies. Fourth option, product producer. All you're doing is spitting out new products, new ideas. I say that as though that's simple. But being a product producer, maybe like as an early warning or a Zelle, where you are manufacturing the product, but not managing the distribution of it. And then lastly, an ecosystem integrator. This is more of a full platform, where you're platform banking, where plugging in either through API or otherwise other products and services, maybe from other banks, maybe from fintechs, but you are the platform that holds it all together. So if we're thinking about the different ways you can engage and the skills that are required across the bank, the capabilities, it's very basic keys to success. Know what you want your bank to be. So look ahead into the future. Where is our bank headed? Are we going to be a platform? Are we going to be a utility? Will we be fully integrated? And with that in mind, set your engagement strategy accordingly. You'll need a different set of partners depending on the role you expect to play as a financial institution. And the good news is you can master the areas that you need to and deprioritize the areas you don't. You can stop doing certain things, free up time, and really focus on, if you're going to be a platform company, you can really focus on the origination piece of it so that you can get the right fintechs and the right products and services onto your platform. So really being thoughtful about what you want to be, setting the engagement strategy accordingly, and then mastering the areas that you need to be successful. So I hope I've left you with a couple of things to think about as you're embarking on your partnerships with fintechs. For every bank, there's no single answer, and there's no right or wrong answer, but at least there's some things for you to be thinking about. Thank you.